Hi everybody. Tomorrow's class we're going to do a kind of a strange activity. I'm hoping to get everybody to do this sort of on their own and then share their results with everybody else. So be able to take a photo or live stream if you've got that capacity. Um, this setup in front of you is what we're going to be doing. So somehow or another you're going to need to. Oh, I should tell you what we're doing. We're going to explore how to make perspective drawings, how to draw three things in 2 and 3 point perspective. So I'm going to show you this. Outside my window, I've got a box, and it's just set up on a table. Now the point of this is we got to find a location that we can consistently bring our eyeball back to. So I've got this stick that propped up by a chair, and I can put my eyeball right here and be able to see the lines on the box, right? So I previously prepared some bits of masking tape. I only had really wide masking tape, so I had to kind of carefully cut it up into thin strips. But you could do lots of other things. For instance, if you have non-permanent markers, you could just write on the glass with a marker, especially if you have those dry erase markers. They come off real easy. Although if you're willing to do a little bit of elbow grease, even a Sharpie will come off of glass. Glass is pretty good that way. Anyway, the idea is this. You're going to put your eyeball at the marked location and then put the tape or whatever you use on the glass so that you exactly cover one of the edges of the box out there, the cube. Well, it's not a perfect cube, but let me do this for a second. One of my edges. Let's see. That like that. Just want to cut it off. I might as well go for it and do them all. Oh man, I took my eye off of the spot. You got to get your eye right on that same spot every time. And you got to, oh yeah, you got to be able to close one eye. If you can't close one eye and hold it shut, then you're going to want to, get a patch or something so that you can hold your eye closed. All right, I'm out of that strip of tape, but man, it went farther than I thought it would. New piece of tape. Get my eyeball in here. This takes a little while to do, but once it's done, it's pretty cool. Okay, so I made an image of the box in tape on the window there. Get my spot out of the way and bring the camera over here. If I put this in just the right location, you'll be able to. Now, where is just the right location? I'm putting the camera right where that spot for my eyeball was, and I think it's right there. Now, interestingly, if you put your eye in this spot, that the thing that I traced on the window is indistinguishable from the box outside. But if I look at this thing from a different angle, does that blue tape thing really look like a box? It should be quite distorted. It may not be that bad because this image was from fairly close up. But if you look at any painting that involves perspective from the wrong angle, things won't look right. So that raises an interesting point that paintings are actually designed to be seen from a particular location. Usually it's right in the middle of the painting and about 5 feet away. But different paintings have the perspective, the correct point for viewing them in different places. So I have a little indoor setup so that I can just demo what I want you guys to do a little more easily. So this table surface is where I'm going to film from, but you should be able to do what I'm doing here on this table through a window looking outside of your bedroom or wherever you go. All right, so this sheet of plexiglass, which unfortunate, I just happen to have a little chunk of plexiglass laying around outside in the house. I'm going to tape it in place so that we can draw on it without budging it. And I have set up some of my disaster supplies here. We've got lots of pasta, lots of tea in the house for the pandemic. So what I've created with these boxes, actually, let me bring the camera around so you see that, is something that's going to look kind of like a street, right? So we're going to be drawing like the buildings down a street, but we'll just do this with boxes. So you need 3 or 4 boxes to line up so that they will make sure that they run parallel to each other. Right? You're going to want how do I say this? These surfaces got to be exactly parallel, because that's the way it really is when you're looking at perspective down the street. And that's actually the fundamental thing we're dealing with, is lines that are parallel to each other do something kind of cool when you see them in perspective. Let me return you to a side view so you can kind of watch what I'm up to. All right, so I've got my glass set up, and then I've got my stick here. Oh no, my stick is the wrong length, because I want my perspective point to be down, close to street level. So I need to break off some of this stick. Uh-oh. There we go. That should be pretty cool. I want to get a little closer to the glass too. Awesome. So great. Let me get the other things out of the way so we can draw just the parts that are supposed to be our model. I just moved something because I had my phone set on top of this box of tea. So again, be really careful that the things are parallel to each other. I'm thinking you can see where I'm going to draw from, but you can't see the things I'm about to draw. Now I'm going to do this with dry erase markers, but it's the same as before. You want to just put your eyeball at the point from which the perspective will be and trace out the box. Oops. That was one edge of the box, and the other edge, the ones that kind of go off into the distance, those are very foreshortened. And the far end of the box is different too. And the top of this box is actually, wow, I drew it wrong. The top of this box, from the place I'm seeing it, actually, that was awful. I really did a bad job of that. Maybe I need to come up with a better way to get my eyeball in the right spot. And partly it's because this stick I'm using is a little thick. So I'm going to try turning it sideways and give that another shot. This is where a dry erase is so nice. You can just get rid of the bad attempt. Come back to it. I'm going to try to draw the T box first. Yeah, that's bad too. I'm just kind of darkening up the lines that I got in so weakly. Well, it looks kind of all right. Oh no, the stick moved. You got to do something so your stick doesn't move. I think I'm going to tape this guy in place, but I first got to put it back exactly where it was. Okay. I got to get my eyeball at the right spot so that my drawing on the glass exactly covers the actual physical object out there on the other side of the glass. Okay. Hopefully that little scrap of tape will hold her in place. Now I want to go on. All right, that's not going to fly. I'm going to do a double take here. Alright, so I got some of that thick blue painter's tape that I was that I had cut up and was using before, and I should really be able to lash this thing into place now. Okay, I'm going to get it in 2 places so it doesn't have any chance to budge on me. It is so important that you get yourself a rigid base to work from. Okay. Hopefully you guys can come up with something a little smoother than what I've just done, but anyway, I'm going to erase that. And actually it's kind of perfect that I was using a chair to prop the stick up, because I can actually sit on the chair, put my eyeball in the right location. Huh? Yep. And I should be able to trace stuff from here. All right. It's not exciting watching somebody else trace stuff, I know, but I keep moving my eyeball away from the spot where it's supposed to be. All right. Sorry about the squeaky sound this makes. I think that's going to be close enough. All right, so I'll bring you around so you can see my masterpiece here. It's not the best thing, but you should notice something interesting about the lines that are going away from us. They all converge somewhere. Let me switch to a different color. I'll try to draw the convergence of the lines that are going away. See, these are the lines at the base of the boxes on the left. And that heads out that way. The boxes on the right, their bases are like that, and they head out that way. And in fact, every pair of lines is headed for the same point. Whoops, not those. That's not a line. But I think because of the way I drew it, I was a little bit sloppy. That didn't quite work out. But in fact, there is supposed to be a single point down here where all these parallel lines look like they're heading. So we're going to drop the example and I'll show it to you on the whiteboard. Yeah, it's sort of okay. Square that up a little better. All right, so if I want to draw the view of things in perspective from along a street, you usually first pick what's called the vanishing point. My phone made some kind of weird notifications sound, but I think it's all right. Vanishing point. I'm writing that on there, but I think I'm going to erase it in a second because we just want to see the drawing, not any words on here. Now, if I have the corner of a building in this perspective, draw it as a straight line. Does that look straight? Not even close. A straight vertical line. And that's really how the sides of my pasta boxes looked looking through the window. But the top and the bottom edge of my building all aim towards this vanishing point. That is, they go towards that. Oh, It's hard to do, isn't it? Actually, it might help us to have like a stick nearby that we could use as a guide. You may find it strange how many strips of weird looking sticks I have in this house, but that's me. Alright, so see how bad I was at doing that? And the part of the building's edge that's farther away from us will again look like a straight vertical line. Now, if there was another building even closer, that would be, you know, maybe it's a shorter building, but it's closer to us. The face of it, at least that's on the street, would look similar. And there's actually other vanishing points for the other directions, like well, we'll come back to that later. So let's get the street itself, right? If I actually draw the boundaries of the street, they should be heading towards the vanishing point. Now I'm going to put some sidewalk in there, so there's a little bit of room between the buildings and the curb. But, you know, if there's yet another building beyond the one that I had just drawn, its base would look like that. Maybe again, it's not quite as tall as this one, but it's relatively tall. Yeah, and then you can start doing stuff like put in doors. Just make sure that any lines that would be horizontal head towards the vanishing point. I'm gonna throw some windows in there. Or maybe windows should come in pairs, shouldn't they? You have like 2 windows on the. I can't do it. You got to be more careful than I was. Because our next to the last project is going to be just doing this, making a perspective drawing of a city scene. So we might have here a big double door entrance to this building and a collection of windows. Oops. Got to make sure that the tops and bottoms of those windows actually head towards the vanishing point. I'm going to draw a couple of window tops and bottoms, and then I'll come back and get the verticals that make them look like windows. I guess if you really want them to look like windows, you subdivide it even more, make panes in them. I'm getting sloppy. All right, so that's one side of the street. Now the other side of the street will look similar. There'll be the curb side and the setback where the buildings start. Many buildings will have a vertical line because they head towards the sky. And this one is just 2 buildings apart on that block, and just for ease of drawing, I'm going to make them the same height. So I got like that. Everybody's converging on that vanishing point, though. You see how all these rays come in towards the one position? In fact, if the street goes farther beyond where these buildings are, the sides of the street eventually can actually go off and appear to meet at the vanishing point. And I think anybody who's walked down a railroad track will tell me, yeah, that's exactly what you see, right? When you look off into the distance at parallel lines, they appear to just converge somewhere off at infinity. That's the vanishing point, that place at infinity where they meet. Now, having done all this, you don't really have a vanishing point in the universe. It's a point we use to construct stuff. So you get rid of that, and the vanishing point is on the horizon. So draw the horizon right through where the vanishing point was, and usually you make things look dimmer or get grayed out as they go off into the distance. So you may have good solid lines back here where the points are close, edges are close, but as you get close to the vanishing, draw things lighter. So that's what's called a 1-point perspective. And we'll come back and I'll show you a second thing on 2-point perspective. So yeah, I didn't have a box of approximately the right size, but I wanted something roughly cubical for the second demo. So I just taped a couple of my Ronzoni pasta boxes together. I want to show you how to make something that looks correct, that looks like perspective when you've got a cubical thing that's seen kind of not in such a way that you get that tunnel view like on a streetscape. So if you see both of the faces of a building, for instance, you need to use what's called 2-point perspective. So how does that work? Like the name implies, you have 2 points, and these points are actually out on the horizon, way off to the side. Sometimes they're actually not even on the bit of paper that you're working on. Oh, I need them to be the same height. So let me just verify that I kept them the same. Look at that, I've already got a mark on the board there. And that wasn't very good, so I need it to be the same. Oh, right there. So the horizon would be going through those 2 points. To draw a cube that looks right in perspective here, draw the corner of it that's faced towards you. And that'll be a straight up and down vertical line. I'm trying to make it bold by covering it over more than once. And then the side, on one side will pass towards that pointed, or the edges will head towards that point of infinity on the horizon. Yeah. And both top and bottom are going to be canted so that you end up heading towards that location. Now, vertical lines, you just draw them vertical. So I could draw the cubes, one side of the cube anyway, like that. The other side, it's the same thing, but just do it on the other side. So let's say about like this. The top edge. Something like that. And then a vertical edge. I don't want to place it so this thing actually looks like it's cubical when we're done. If you've seen the Star Trek movies, it's like the board coming at us. If you were really trying to draw this so that it looked natural, then you continue the horizon line straight up until they pass behind the object. Right, you've got a nice cube. So it's called 2-point perspective because literally there's just 2 points on the horizon you use. In truth, when you're looking at something three-dimensional, there's usually at least 3 perspective points. In fact, there's really infinitely many perspective points because any set of parallel lines, if you follow them towards into the distance, they appear to converge. We get 3 because we're looking at things that are particularly like man-made things that have 3 orthogonal directions that all the corners follow. So if we wanted to actually see 3-point projection, let me try that one. We need a 3rd point. And this is used when you're not seeing a cube that's fairly close to being kind of parallel to you. That is, you're seeing it, from the air. If you're looking at a building from the air, it definitely doesn't look like 2-point perspective anymore. So that point I just dropped down is going to be roughly where the middle of my cube is going to be. I'm going to put vanishing points at the sort of 3 corners of the board. All right. And make this first one go straight. So my vanishing point will be right about there, down low. think I want that to be a longer line than I drew it there. Like that. Let's do this guy in this direction. Now, I don't have quite long enough of a stick here, so I'm just going to guesstimate that so that it actually heads towards the vanishing point. Looks more or less right. I guess on this side I must be working slightly off center on the board. Right. So I've got parts of the cube drawn. I'm going to make it vanish towards the spot below in the vertical direction. And nothing happened. What did I do? Must have had the marker up against the wood instead of against the board. There we go. And lastly, we need to get the top face of the cube so that it looks right. And this is where it's going to really be tough. I'll have to eyeball it so that that line is continuing on and going towards the vanishing point. And you're probably saying to yourself, wow, that does not look like a cube is supposed to look. It's very distorted. But it's because you're looking at it through the camera, and the camera is not quite in the right position. If you're doing perspective things, your eye has to be in the right spot. So if I put you up about here, it should look more like it's supposed to. So I noticed that part of what I was doing live didn't really show up very well because the camera wasn't zoomed in close enough so you could see things. So I thought I'd do a little demo for you of using some software to make the same demonstration, basically. So there's a tool that I think I've used before in class for you guys to look at things in 3D perspective. This is called OpenSCAD. It's what I use for making 3D printable designs, but I've just used it to model a bunch of blocky buildings that are put alongside of this gray long strip of a street. And so the first thing we're going to do is, actually the first thing I'm going to do is turn off the XYZ axes because you don't really need to see that. And then I'm going to pop myself down in the middle of the street and then walk towards this cityscape until we get close enough that we can see that we've the 1 point perspective. Do you notice how all these horizontal lines, like the bases of the buildings and the sides of the road, are heading towards a point that would be right about here? But so are the tops of the buildings, and depending on where the tops are, these follow different lines, but they're all heading in the same place. They converge at the vanishing point off in the distance. I can also show you with this an example of 3 point perspective. So let's just start up a new file. I say start up a new file. Why is it doing nothing? All right, just kill it. I'll start it fresh. We'll do a new one. Okay, so let me put the axes back on so we can see it. What I'm going to need to do is just have it draw a single box. For that, I've got to put the editor back on and tell it I want a cube that'll be, say, 30 units on a side. And I'm going to make it centered on the origin. Center equals true does that. So we'll render that, and there's our cube. Now, if I look at this from the edge, do you see the 2 point perspective? That is the sides of the cube are heading towards 2 points that would be pretty far away, well off the screen. But if I get closer to the cube, I can exaggerate the amount of, or if I turn the cube sideways a little bit, create the vanishing point would be just a little bit off the edge of the screen here. There is in this tool a little option. See down at the bottom here where my mouse is? You can choose to look at something in perspective or look at it in what's called an orthogonal projection, where you forget about vanishing points and just try to draw it. And things look, especially if you're very close to something, they don't look right when you're in an orthogonal projection. That's the cube projected flat onto the plane that we're viewing it from, but you're missing the perspective, and it looks wrong. You put the perspective back on, and it's like, oh yeah, it's a cube. Let me tilt this cube towards us a bit and zoom so that it just fills the screen. At this point, you're able to see a true three-point perspective. Notice the sides of the cube that were vertical, they're not anymore. You see how they're tapered? They're drawing closer together as you get lower on the cube. And the same thing is true of the other parallel edges, the bottom edge here and the top edge here. Those are converging. Now those happen to be converging rather far off in the distance, but that's because the vanishing point is well, it's out on the horizon, right? So it's pretty far from us. So there you go, three-point perspective for a cube. We already saw the one-point perspective. Two-point perspective is really just a special case of three-point, where the vertical lines are either your viewpoint is dead square to the vertical lines, in which case they literally are parallel, or it's close enough like that where you might as well have these vertical lines be parallel, be vertical. Actually, already you can see, because of the pixelation on the sides, these lines on the left and right side of the cube are not dead vertical. Okay, that should do that. I'll see you tomorrow.